Commander Dorian Kess stood at perfect attention within the polished obsidian interior of Ark's Zenith's command hub, a space station orbiting the storm-racked planet Raulis Prime. The hub was alive with holograms, alien voices, and blinking alerts. Over 24 species moved in and out of diplomatic chambers, transport pads, and high-security wings. Dorian's tall frame was wrapped in a matte black tactical uniform, sleeves rolled to the elbow, revealing muscular forearms marked with faded scars from past skirmishes. He looked every bit the soldier, short dark hair, storm-gray eyes, and a presence that made even bureaucrats choose their words carefully. "You summoned me, sir?" he said, voice clipped but calm. Director Halvin, a grizzled, stern-eyed Earth ambassador, gestured toward a privacy field. "We've got a situation, Commander. Delicate. Dangerous. Diplomatic." Kess arched a brow. "I specialize in all three." Halvin didn't smile. Instead, he activated the holodisplay. A 3D file unfolded, revealing a striking figure, a humanoid female with deep sapphire blue fur, luminous yellow eyes, and thick, cascading silver-white hair. Her long tail curled in the still image like a question mark. She wore what appeared to be ceremonial armor, elegant but revealing, laced in metals unfamiliar to Earth's catalog. "Name's Virelia Sariwayan," Halvin began. "She's the daughter of the Grand Huntress of Aesterii Prime. That makes her royalty, and a political powder keg." Dorian's jaw set slightly. He'd worked with the Aesterii before. An apex predator species, their culture was tribal, hierarchical, and aggressive. The fact that Virelia was here on a peace exchange made him uneasy. "She's here as a gesture of goodwill," Halvin continued, lowering his voice. "But she's already chewed through 2 escorts and nearly started a brawl with the Kyril delegation. So I'm being asked to babysit a spoiled space princess?" Dorian asked, arms crossed. "No," Halvin said, meeting his gaze. "You're being ordered to protect her from threats, inside and out, and make sure she doesn't insult the wrong ambassador, violate interspecies protocol, or go wandering into the reactor core again." Dorian didn't flinch. "Understood. When do I meet her?" "Now. She's in Guest Wing Beta Suite 9. And Kess?" Halvin's expression sharpened. "I know she'll test you. Do not let her provoke you. Do not escalate. Do not get personal." Dorian gave a nod and turned on his heel. But internally his instincts already prickled. This wasn't going to be a simple assignment. He hadn't even met her yet, and he could already tell. She was going to be trouble. The doors to Suite 9 hissed open with a faint hydraulic sigh. Dorian stepped into a chamber that looked more like the inner sanctum of a noble court than a diplomatic apartment. The floor was tiled in deep obsidian glass. The walls shimmered with soft bioluminescent tendrils that pulsed gently, giving the room a dreamlike glow. A full panoramic window curved along the far wall, revealing the swirling violet storms of Raulis Prime below. He scanned the room, no sign of the guest. Then came the voice. "So. Another shadow." It was playful, melodic, and laced with amusement, and it came from above. Dorian's eyes snapped upward. Virelia hung upside down from one of the ceiling's curved support beams, her claws gripping the alloy as if it were natural stone. Her long silver-white hair dangled toward the floor, swaying slightly. The tight, midnight blue tunic she wore clung to her lithe frame, the fabric cut sharply at her thighs and shoulders. Her golden eyes sparkled with mischief and challenge. "You're late," she said. "I wasn't given a time," Dorian replied flatly, unfazed. She dropped gracefully from the beam, landing on all fours with feline ease, then rose to her full height in one fluid motion. Taller than most women, she stood nearly eye level with him. Her tail curled lazily behind her, and every movement of her body was calculated, poised, and unnervingly graceful. "I'm Commander Dorian Kess," he said. "Your new security detail." She circled him slowly, inspecting him. "You're sturdier than the last one." "The redhead with the nervous laugh?" He resigned. "Yes," she said sweetly. "After I dropped him in the training pit, and sat on his chest until he begged for reassignment. Dorian didn't blink. If you try that with me, I'll file a report. And then I'll make you do laps around the station's outer ring. On foot. Her ears twitched. Is that supposed to scare me? No. It's supposed to bore you. She smirked, tail flicking. A sense of humor. Points for that. I've read your file, he said, folding his arms. You're not here for a vacation, Lady Sari-Wyan. Your presence is supposed to foster trust between our peoples. That means following the rules. Oh no, she groaned dramatically, turning away. Not another protocol puppet. I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to keep you alive. Preferably without a war breaking out. She spun to face him again, closer now. And if I don't cooperate? Then we'll have a problem. And I solve problems. A long silence stretched between them. She tilted her head, studying him. You don't scare easy. No. Good, she said, her voice dropping to a purr. Then maybe you'll last longer than a week. He held her gaze, refusing to react. But he could already feel the edges of the storm gathering. She was going to test every boundary. And he'd be damned if he let her win. Dorian maintained a vigilant presence over the next few days. He shadowed Virilia through every diplomatic meet, cultural tour, and even her impromptu visits to restricted zones, most of which she claimed were accidental explorations. She made no attempt to hide her disdain for station regulations or the stiff formality of the other dignitaries. What she did take interest in, however, was him. Tell me, Commander, she said on the third day, while lounging across a bench in the Botanical Observatory, do you always breathe that quietly? You're like a panther with a badge. I'm not here to amuse you, Dorian said, his arms folded, standing beside the railing that overlooked a vast indoor forest filled with trees genetically engineered to replicate alien biomes. Oh, but you do, she replied with a feigned smile. Immensely. She sipped from a glass of something violet and smoking. These Earth diplomats are so rigid. I can smell the fear on most of them. But not you. You don't even flinch when I bare my teeth. Why is that? Because I've served in actual combat zones, he said without looking at her. You baring your teeth isn't the worst thing I've seen. Yet here you are. She purred. Babysitting. He turned slightly, meeting her gaze. Protecting an alien dignitary with a history of provoking interspecies incidents isn't a demotion. It's a containment assignment. She blinked once slowly. Containment? You don't need guarding, he continued calmly. You need limits. Structure. Something that no one in your world ever gave you. A flicker passed through her golden eyes, too quick to catch unless you were trained to read it. He'd touched a nerve. You don't know anything about my world, she said softly. You're right, he said. But I've learned a lot watching how you push everyone around you. Every time someone gives in, you lose just a little more respect for them. Her ears slowly lowered, not in shame, but acknowledgement. That why you haven't given in yet, Commander? She asked. You want to earn my respect? No, he said. I want to keep the station from descending into chaos. If earning your respect is a side effect, I'll take it. She stood, walking toward him slowly, her tall frame closing the distance with confident grace. Her tail swayed behind her like a banner in low gravity. You talk like someone who thinks he understands predators. I've worked with them. Fought against them. Been one. They stood close now. Too close. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Careful, Commander. If you're not careful, I might start liking you. Don't, he said bluntly. It'll only complicate things. Her smirk returned, but it was softer now, less mocking. Too late. Later that evening, the Grand Convergence reception pulsed with ceremonial music and layered scents from a dozen atmospheres. Species of all shapes and sizes floated, crawled, or walked through the vast atrium draped in flags and bioluminescent silks. Dorian stood at attention near one of the main archways, his eyes never straying far from the sapphire-furred vixen now holding court at the center of a curious cluster of diplomats. Virilia wore a ceremonial gown made of flowing ribbons of iridescent mesh that shimmered with every step she took, revealing flashes of her toned figure beneath. A tiara of starlace bone curled between her tall ears. Every movement was poised, an elegant performance, one she clearly knew how to deliver. And yet, her golden eyes kept flicking toward him, like a dare she hadn't spoken yet. "Your ward is attracting attention," muttered Commander Jean Ardos, a fellow security officer stepping beside Dorian with a drink in hand. "Mostly admiration. Some worry. She's playing to the room," Dorian said quietly. "But she's watching for me. Testing how far she can push it tonight." Jean chuckled. "So, any bets on when she pulls something?" Dorian didn't answer. His instincts already whispered something was coming. As if on cue, Virilia sauntered toward the drink table where a delegation of dignitaries from the Hrescian collective, sentient arachnids with strict ceremonial customs, were delicately partaking of fermented vapor rituals. Without a word, she reached into the mist and swiped one of the ceremonial chalices mid-chant. A collective hiss erupted. One of the Hrescian clicked aggressively, their bodies swelling with defensive posture. "Lady Sorry Wine," Dorian said, already moving toward her with measured calm. "Step away." "Oh, Commander," she said sweetly, swirling the chalice's luminescent contents. "I'm merely sampling the local culture. You just violated 3 Hrescian taboos. That's less culture, more diplomatic suicide." She smiled at him over her shoulder, then deliberately poured the entire contents onto the polished floor. Gasps rippled across the chamber. The Hrescian ambassador chirped something violent and lunged. Dorian reacted instantly. His arm shot up, intercepting the ambassador mid-lunge with a firm but respectful block. "Ambassador Sci-Fi, please, allow me to discipline my charge." The ambassador's eyes blinked all at once. Then, with a terse shudder, it backed away. Dorian turned to Virilia. "Come. Now." She tilted her head, ears twitching with amusement, but followed him without protest. They exited the reception hall in tense silence. The moment the soundproof doors sealed behind them, she spun on him. "Was that a threat? In front of all those species?" "That was me preventing a diplomatic incident." Again. She stepped closer, her fangs flashing slightly. "And what would you have done if the ambassador had struck me?" "Stop them. Just like I'll stop you." For a moment, her playful mask cracked. "You really don't fear me, do you?" she said, voice quieter. "No. And that bothers you." She reached up slowly, tracing a clawed finger along his chest. "Maybe it excites me." He caught her wrist, not harshly, but firmly. "Boundaries," he said. She stared at his hand holding hers, then leaned in close, her voice a whisper. "Then maybe you should teach me some." Dorian released her wrist, stepping back before her words could spark something neither of them were ready to address. "Go cool off, Virilia," he said firmly. "This isn't a game." Her golden eyes narrowed, unreadable. But instead of replying with her usual sarcasm, she simply turned on her heel and walked away, her tail swaying behind her like a challenge. He watched until the doors to her suite sealed behind her. Then he exhaled. Back in the security hub, the lights were dimmed to night cycle levels. Dorian reviewed surveillance footage from the reception, cataloging the expressions and reactions of various alien representatives. Most were scandalized. A few, oddly enough, looked impressed. He tapped his calm. "Kess to Director Halvan." "Go ahead," came the gravelly voice. "We're going to need to run cultural reconciliation with the Hrescian delegation. And maybe send them a gift, fermented spores or something equally vile." "I saw the footage," Halvan said with a sigh. "She's daring someone to react. And you didn't. That's the point." There was a pause. "You think you're getting through to her?" "I think she's testing how far she has to go before someone stops her, without fear." Halvan chuckled humorlessly. "Well, if anyone's built for that tightrope walk, it's you." Before Dorian could respond, a station-wide alert chimed. The calm voice of the central AI rang out. Unscheduled power fluctuation detected. Sector Gamma 12. Investigating anomaly. Dorian tensed. Gamma 12 was deep storage, and dangerously close to diplomatic housing. He switched comms. Security, what's going on in Gamma 12? Tracking now, sir, came the response. Motion sensors picked up a single life form near Conduit Relay Delta. I'm heading there, Dorian said, already moving. He arrived 5 minutes later, weapon holstered but ready. The lights flickered overhead. A low hum vibrated through the walls like a growl. And there she was. Virelia crouched near a relay junction, claws embedded in a snapped control panel. Sparks hissed around her. She was breathing hard, her fur matted slightly with sweat. What the hell are you doing? Dorian barked, rushing forward. She didn't move. I heard something. A frequency. It wasn't from the station. He grabbed her arm, pulling her up. You disabled a power conduit to chase a sound? It wasn't random. It was patterned. Language? Not one I recognized. Dorian stared at her, the irritation draining from his face. You think it was a transmission? Yes, she said. And it wasn't coming from outside the station. It was coming from below. Dorian's stomach turned. The lowest decks of Ark's Zenith were classified, off-limits even to most senior personnel. And now Virelia had detected something, below. He tapped his comm. Kes to control. Initiate a deep scan of sublevel engineering. I want a full spectrum analysis. There was a pause. Sir? The voice returned, hesitant. We're showing anomalous readings. Energy spikes. Faint but real. Virelia met his gaze. Still think I'm just here to cause trouble? He looked at her, really looked this time. Her fur was bristling, her ears still twitching from adrenaline. Whatever she had sensed down here, it had rattled her. No, he said quietly. I think something just changed. Dorian guided Virelia away from the sparking panel, keeping her close as the emergency lighting cast long, flickering shadows across the corridor. The hum in the walls wasn't fading, it was growing. Almost like a pulse. They exited the maintenance tunnel into a broader corridor near engineering subdeck access. 2 security officers were already there, rifles drawn, faces tight with tension. Status? Dorian demanded. Readings are unstable, said Officer Marin, eyes flicking to Virelia with visible uncertainty. Thermal signatures detected, but no visuals. And, sir, I swear I saw movement. Something fast. Dorian's jaw clenched. No unauthorized teams were scheduled in this section tonight? None, sir. Sealed logs. He glanced at Virelia. She was breathing slower now, tail curling anxiously behind her. Describe what you heard earlier. Exactly. She nodded, voice low. It started as a vibration deep, like tectonic movement, but regular. Then it changed pitch. Became structured. Like syllables. Almost musical. It wasn't just noise. You recognized the pattern? I memorized it. She closed her eyes, then softly began to vocalize the tone, low, rhythmic clicks and hums, so foreign it almost hurt to hear. The hallway lights dimmed again. Then came the reply. A sound echoed faintly down the corridor. The same pattern. Slower. Deeper. Everyone froze. Dorian raised a hand. Weapons down. Back away slowly. No sudden movements. Sir, what is it? Marin whispered. Virelia answered first. Not Krell. Not something known. But it's aware of us. She stepped forward before Dorian could stop her, her ears swiveling toward the source of the sound. It's not hostile. Not yet. Dorian grabbed her arm again, firmly but not roughly. We're not here to make contact with shadow things hiding in maintenance shafts. We're here to keep this station intact and you alive. Her voice was steel. If something's living under this station, broadcasting ancient language patterns, it changes everything. That's not a threat, it's a secret. Secrets get people killed, Dorian said coldly. Come on. We're sealing this sector until I speak with Director Halvin and Central Command. She didn't resist as he led her back toward the main lifts. But as they walked, she muttered, You're afraid of unknown signals beneath a diplomatic station that houses 25 alien governments? He replied. Yes. Damn right I am. Back in her suite, Virelia stood near the window, watching Release Prime storms churn endlessly below. She hadn't spoken since they'd returned. Dorian stood near the door, arms crossed. I'll be back in 2 hours, he said finally. Don't leave. I'm locking this sector down. Her voice was quiet. You believe me now. I believe you think what you heard was real. And I trust your instincts more than I used to. She turned toward him. Why? Because you didn't chase that signal for fun. You were scared. She blinked once. And that matters to you? It means you're not playing anymore. He stepped out of her suite and sealed the door behind him. But as he walked down the hall, one thought circled in his mind like a shadow. Whatever had whispered back from the dark, it knew her name. Director Halvin's office was bathed in deep amber light when Dorian arrived, a relic of the director's preference for earth tones to calm his nerves. But tonight, nothing about Halvin seemed calm. I reviewed your report 3 times, he said, pacing behind his desk. A clandestine signal from the sublevels. A non-registered life form responding in a coded language. And Lady Virelia is the only one who could hear it? She's not the only one who heard it, Dorian corrected. 2 security officers confirmed hearing a reply, structured, non-random, not mechanical. Halvin slammed his palm on the desk. This is a diplomatic hub, Commander. Not a xenoanthropological dig site. If word gets out. We have containment protocols, Dorian said calmly. And more importantly, this isn't just about a transmission. This is targeted. Virelia says it called to her. Halvin stopped pacing. You think she's the intended recipient? I think someone, or something, has been waiting. And her presence triggered a response. The director's jaw tightened. Are you implying some pre-contact or ancestral link between the Aesterii and... Whatever this is? I'm saying we can't afford to ignore this, Dorian said. We need to map the sublevels and trace the source of that signal. Halvin stared out the window for a long moment, then finally nodded. Fine. Quietly. 1 team. No external chatter. If this escalates, if I even smell an incident, I'll shut the whole thing down myself. Dorian inclined his head. Understood. Back in her suite, Virelia stared at the palm of her hand. Ever since the signal, her skin had felt off. Not painful, but aware. Like something was pulling her attention inward. She flexed her fingers, and for a moment she swore the ambient lights responded, dimming in rhythm with her pulse. Then came the chime. She opened the door. Dorian stood there in full tactical gear, a datapad strapped to his arm, sidearm holstered at his hip. Come on, he said. We're going back down. Her ears perked. Director approved it? Limited exploration. You and me. That's all. A smile ghosted across her lips. You trust me that much already? I trust you to sense whatever this is better than our scanners. They descended together in an auxiliary lift that hummed as it passed into zones and used by station staff for decades. The walls grew darker, older, architecture transitioning from smooth polymer to cold, metallic layers of alloy and stone. Parts of the sublevel hadn't been built by humans. When the lift opened, it was like stepping into another world. The air was colder. Stiller. The hallway ahead wasn't in the blueprints. Symbols lined the walls, glowing faintly, pulsing to an unseen rhythm. Virelia inhaled sharply. These aren't markings, she whispered. They're instructions. For what? Dorian asked. She didn't answer. Her eyes locked on a panel at the far end of the corridor. Its surface rippled like liquid metal. As she approached, it shifted, light crawling along its surface until it formed a shape. A silhouette. A vulpine one. Dorian drew his weapon slowly. That's not coincidence. Virelia stood still, her voice a whisper. It's a door. And before Dorian could stop her, she reached out and touched it. The panel shimmered, and with a low chime of impossible harmony, the walls slid open into darkness. A breath of chilled air rushed past them as the hidden door retracted into the wall with an unnatural, fluid grace. Beyond it lay a passage unlike anything Dorian had seen, not just alien, but ancient. The architecture didn't match Asterii, Terran, or any species catalogued by Arx Zenith's vast xenological archives. The walls were formed from dark, seamless stone that pulsed faintly with blue bioluminescent veins. Every few meters the light formed glyphs that morphed slowly, alive, almost breathing. Virelia stepped inside without hesitation, her blue fur softly catching the glowing reflections. I feel like I've seen this before, she murmured. In dreams? Dorian asked, weapon lowered but ready. She nodded. Since I was a child. These walls. That sound. I thought they were just memories left over from ancestral echo ceremonies. But now it's real. He finished for her. The corridors sloped downward in a long, spiral path. The deeper they went, the stronger the sensation became, pressure building behind the eyes, a faint thrumming that vibrated their bones, like the station itself was murmuring in its sleep. They came to a central chamber carved into a perfect dome. At its center stood a pedestal surrounded by what looked like stasis pods. Each one was shaped for a different species, some extinct, others unknown. All sealed. Virelia stepped toward the pedestal. As she neared, the entire chamber responded. Lights flared softly across the walls, forming more glyphs, more patterns. The pedestal shimmered and opened like a blooming flower. Inside it floated a thin crystalline shard, pale violet, humming with quiet energy. Dorian scanned it, frowning. Nothing on file. Not a weapon. Not a beacon. Virelia reached out. Wait, Dorian warned, stepping forward. Too late. Her fingers grazed the crystal. Suddenly, light erupted from the shard, flooding the chamber. Both of them were lifted from the ground, suspended midair as the symbols on the walls lit up in waves. Dorian tried to reach for her, but found himself paralyzed, not by force, but by awe. Visions poured into his mind, ancient battles across galaxies, species he'd never seen, the fall of worlds, and the rise of a single line of guardians. Each vision showed a humanoid vulpine, their blue fur glowing beneath twin suns. The crystal wasn't a relic. It was a key. When they hit the floor again, it was with a thud. Dorian groaned, shaking his head. What the hell was that? Virelia looked dazed but calm. Her eyes glowed faintly now, reflecting the same light as the crystal. I think, she said, voice soft, it just chose me. Dorian's instincts screamed at him to call for extraction, to get them out of this unknown chamber, and seal it off with as many automated turrets and lockdown fields as the station could spare. But one look at Virelia stopped him cold. She stood at the center of the room, the crystal now floating beside her shoulder like a sentient spark. Her fur bristled with residual energy, her eyes golden with threads of white light flickering deep within. She wasn't injured. She wasn't afraid. If anything, she looked more herself than he had ever seen her. Virelia, he began cautiously. She turned toward him slowly, blinking once as though waking from a dream. It showed me everything. What did? The crystal. The sentience inside it. It's not a weapon. It's a seed. A beacon. A memory, one passed down from the original Asterii bloodlines. Long before my people called themselves hunters. We were something else entirely. Dorian holstered his weapon. What kind of something? Watchers. Guardians of deep knowledge. We weren't conquerors. We were anchors. We kept this. She gestured to the slumbering chamber around them. Contained. He frowned. You mean this chamber is a prison? She shook her head. No. It's a warning. Before he could respond, the pedestal sealed again, the crystal vanishing into its cradle. The light dimmed to a low, ambient hum. The glyphs faded. The door behind them reformed with a soft hiss. Virelia sighed, rubbing her temples. It's not going to let me back in now. It gave me what it wanted to give. Dorian walked over and stood beside her. And what exactly does that mean, for you? For the station? I think I was sent here for more than diplomacy. She whispered. I think someone in my bloodline knew this place would call to me. I was just too busy acting out to notice the pull until now. He tilted his head. And now? Now, she said, her tone laced with dry amusement. I have something approaching responsibility. You'd better enjoy this while it lasts, Commander. He chuckled softly. I liked you better when you were just a pain in my ass. No, you didn't, she said, bumping his shoulder lightly with hers. You like the mystery. He didn't answer, but she wasn't wrong. Back in the secure meeting chamber, Director Halvin stared at the footage Dorian brought him. Footage of the glyphs. The chamber. The floating crystal. And Virelia's contact with it. When the recording ended, he remained still for several long seconds. Then, you're telling me this has been underneath Ark's zenith the whole time? Dorian nodded. Buried under unused sectors. Shielded from scanners. It only activated when Virelia touched it. Virelia sat across from him now, her demeanor poised but no longer arrogant. There was weight behind her eyes now. Purpose. It was never meant to be found by anyone else, she said. Only someone who shared the genetic lineage of the Watchers. That's why it responded to me. Halvin leaned forward, fingers steepled. And what does it want? It wants to be remembered, she said. Because there's something coming. Something ancient. The signal wasn't a threat, it was a summons. A call to prepare. And are we supposed to take your word for it? Dorian cut in, his voice firm. I trust her. This wasn't a stunt. The chamber knew her. That thing chose her. Halvin stared at them both for a long time, then sighed. You realize if this gets out, half the council will demand a quarantine. The other half will demand to exploit it. Virelia's eyes darkened. Then don't let it get out. Not yet. Halvin nodded slowly. You'll keep it quiet? On one condition, she said. You let me keep working with Dorian. Halvin raised an eyebrow. Why? Her answer was simple. Because he doesn't treat me like a relic. The next morning, station time 0600, Dorian stood on the observation deck overlooking the diplomatic shuttle bay. Cargo units drifted past on silent anti-grav tracks. The soft hum of the docking clamps and occasional AI announcements echoed through the chamber like a slow, mechanical heartbeat. He sipped black CAF from a steel thermos, and tried to make sense of what had changed in just 5 days. First, she'd been a nuisance. Then a threat. Now she was something else entirely. A chosen link in a forgotten galactic chain. And God's help him, someone he'd begun to respect. Your posture's slipping, came the familiar voice behind him. He didn't turn. You're awake early. Virelia stepped beside him, arms crossed, her tail lazily curling through the air. She wore a sleeveless black jumpsuit, tactical, utilitarian, and far more subdued than her usual dramatic attire. Her blue fur gleamed under the ambient skylights, silver-white hair tied loosely behind her head. Couldn't sleep, she said simply. Too many echoes in my head. He handed her the thermos without a word. She took a sip, grimaced, then took another. Ugh! It's terrible. I like it. Dorian smirked faintly. The caffeine helps. They stood in silence for a few moments. Finally, she asked, You believe what we saw down there changes things between us? He gave it thought before answering. No. But it explains some things. Like why I was born with memories that didn't belong to me, she asked, her voice softer now. Why I always felt wrong in court, or under palace domes, like I was never meant to stay still. Exactly. She turned toward him fully now. And what about you, Commander? You don't exactly belong in a room full of diplomats either. He gave her a side glance. I belong wherever the chaos starts. That why you haven't walked away from me yet? He turned to face her, eyes steady. You're not chaos anymore, Virilia. You're a vector. A vector, she repeated, amused. That's the most boring compliment I've ever received. You're welcome. Before she could respond, his comm buzzed. Commander Kess, report to the tactical hub. Immediate priority. Unknown contact approaching station perimeter. Unresponsive to hails. Dorian's jaw tightened. He tapped his comm. On my way. He turned to her, and to his surprise, she was already retrieving her own comm unit. You're staying here, he said reflexively. No, I'm not, she replied, already moving. If that signal yesterday was part of a bigger pattern, we need to know if this is connected. He opened his mouth to argue, but stopped. He nodded once. Then don't fall behind. The tactical hub was lit with crimson warning strobes when they arrived. Analysts hovered over consoles, muttering updates into comms as data scrolled past in frantic waves. A large holographic display showed the inbound ship, sleek, silver-black, with no identifying marks. Its propulsion trail was wrong. Too cold. Too quiet. ETA? Dorian asked. 72 seconds. No response to hails. No weapons detected yet, replied the tactical officer on duty. Virilia stepped up beside him, eyes fixed on the ship's silhouette. That's not Centurion. Not Krell. Not even Hreshen. She murmured. I've never seen this shape before. But what? Dorian asked. I recognize it, she whispered. As the vessel approached the outer defense perimeter, its hull shimmered, and a single signal transmitted across all open channels. Virilia's name. Spoken in the same rhythmic pattern she'd heard in the sublevel. Dorian stared at her. Looks like you have company. The signal repeated 3 times, each time clearer, louder, until it filled the entire tactical hub with an eerie resonance that buzzed against the walls. The engineers and officers exchanged glances, some inching away from their consoles as if the sound alone might infect the systems. Virilia stood frozen. It's calling me, she murmured. Not just saying my name. Calling me. Like I'm expected. Dorian stepped between her and the projection. I'm not letting you walk onto that thing. Her eyes met his. I wasn't asking for permission, Commander. You said it yourself, I'm a vector. Whatever this is, it's tied to me. Which is exactly why we need to not hand you over to the first mysterious ship that whispers your name. She turned away, pacing. You think I want to go running into an alien vessel that looks like a ghost and hums with dead frequencies? But it's not about want anymore. The crystal, the visions, they weren't just history. They were activation. Whatever they awakened in me, this ship is part of it. Dorian looked toward the screen again. The vessel had stopped. It didn't enter the station's restricted zone. It simply waited. Director Halvin's voice crackled through the overhead speakers. Commander Kess. Report. Dorian hit the comm panel. Unknown vessel has halted outside weapons range. It's broadcasting Virilia's name in the same ancient format as the sublevel signal. Still no sign of aggression. Then stall. Halvin growled. And for the love of Terra, don't let her out of your sight. Copy that. Dorian looked at her. You're not going alone. Virilia smirked. Finally, something we agree on. The boarding procedure was slow and methodical. The alien ship sent no reply to their hails, but its hull restructured as they approached, forming a narrow corridor just large enough for 2 figures side by side. No threats. No weapons. Just a clear invitation. Inside, the walls pulsed with dim light. The atmosphere was breathable, though it smelled faintly of ozone and something older, something dry, like dust on forgotten stone. Virilia's posture shifted the moment they stepped through the threshold. Her ears perked, tail stilled, shoulders squared. Recognition, she said. Dorian scanned the walls. From the ship? No. From me. They walked in silence through the corridor until it opened into a chamber, not unlike the sublevel vault. But this one was filled with light. Not harsh, not artificial, but radiant, emanating from a single structure at the room's core, a circular platform suspended in midair, with strands of energy curling around it like petals around a blooming flower. Hovering above the platform was a figure. Virilia stepped forward, and the figure responded, unfolding. It was tall. Vulpine. Ancient. Its fur was blue-gray, its body semi-transparent, eyes glowing with white flame. It spoke not with sound, but directly into their minds. You have awakened the last echo, Virilia Sariwine. The blood memory is alive again. Virilia dropped to one knee, not out of submission, but instinct. Who are you? Dorian asked, stepping protectively beside her. I am Memory. Guardian. Witness. The archivist of the old line. The image turned fully toward Virilia. You carry the final strain of the Guardian sequence. You are the link that was lost. Virilia rose slowly, voice low. Why now? Why call to me? Because the quiet void is stirring. The seals of the deep drift are weakening. And only a blood-bound echo may close them again. Dorian stepped forward. Speak plainly. What danger are we talking about? The archivist's glowing eyes turned to him. A hunger older than stars. It was sealed away before your species lit its first fire. But its prison has fractured. It knows she lives. And it will come. The light dimmed slightly. The figure began to fade. Prepare her. Protect her. Or all will be unmade. And with that, the chamber darkened. The platform cracked. And the archivist vanished into sparks. The silence left behind by the archivist was absolute. Not just quiet, but a vacuum, as though sound itself had recoiled in fear. Dorian stood rigid, eyes scanning the chamber for threats, his instincts firing on every level. Virilia, by contrast, seemed dazed. Her ears drooped slightly, and her glowing eyes blinked slowly, as if waking from a dream she hadn't meant to end. Virilia, Dorian said, stepping toward her. Talk to me. She shook her head, slowly at first. Then faster, regaining her composure. I saw everything. Not just what was said, but what wasn't. She placed her palm on the still warm surface of the platform. The void, the deep drift, it's not just some ancient monster story. It's real. And it's leaking back into our space. Which means we need to inform command, Dorian said. And maybe start prepping the station's defense grid. No, she said, turning to face him. We can't just shoot at this thing, Dorian. If it comes, when it comes, there won't be anything to shoot at. It invades minds. It corrodes from within. It turns civilization into echo. Echo? He asked. She nodded. That's what they called it, the state between life and memory. The Watchers were the only ones who could resist it. And I'm the last. Dorian stared at her. So what, you're some kind of living firewall now? Maybe, she muttered, but I sure as hell wasn't trained for it. A low chime sounded behind them. The entry corridor was closing. Slowly. Deliberately. Dorian grabbed her arm. Time to go. They ran, the door sealing behind them the moment they stepped through. The ship shuddered beneath their feet, and outside the port window, the stars began to flicker. The ship's powering down, Virilia said. Whatever brought it here, it's done. Its final message delivered. Dorian slapped his calm. Cast to ARC's Zenith Control. 2 for immediate retrieval. Priority level 1. No questions. No delay. Minutes later, back in the secure debriefing room, Director Halvan sat stone-faced as Dorian recounted everything. Virilia stood beside him, arms crossed, still pulsing faintly with energy she hadn't yet learned to control. A hunger older than stars? Halvan repeated. You expect me to bring that to the Earth Council? I expect you to prepare the station. Dorian said. Silently if possible. Quietly reinforce sublevels. Rotate shift schedules. Bring in psychic dampeners. Don't explain why. Just do it. And if they ask what we're protecting against? Dorian leaned forward. Tell them nothing. Because if we name it too early, we risk drawing it closer. Halvin sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. And what do you suggest we do with Lady Virelia? She spoke before Dorian could. I stay. I train. I remember what was left behind. The answers are in the chamber below, and in me. Halvin eyed her warily. And how do I know you won't lose control of whatever that thing awakened in you? You don't, she said calmly. But neither do I. That's why I need him. She gestured to Dorian. He's the only one who's seen me at my worst and didn't flinch. I need someone who doesn't worship me. Someone who'll drag me back from the edge if I start falling toward it. Dorian was silent for a moment. Then, I'll keep her on a short leash. Virelia smirked. Just don't pull too hard, Commander. I bite. Halvin exhaled. God help us all. 2 days passed. The alien vessel remained dormant, hovering in low orbit just outside Ark's zenith shield perimeter. It neither moved nor responded to scans, as though its purpose had already been fulfilled. Dorian insisted it be left untouched. A beacon, he called it. Not a threat yet. The director reluctantly agreed under the condition that it be placed under round-the-clock observation and restricted from all docking requests. But the station was already shifting. Subtle changes spread like cracks under glass. Atmospheric controls malfunctioned. Gravity fluctuated in unused corridors. Several crew members reported hallucinations, faint whispers in their sleep, feelings of being watched in mirror reflections. Even the AI had begun to slow, as though burdened by something it couldn't process. Meanwhile, in a dim training arena on Deck 32, Dorian watched as Virelia moved across the mat with fluid, lethal grace. She'd stripped down to a tight black vest and training pants, her blue fur slick with sweat. Her movements were precise, more so than he'd seen before. Each strike, each spin, each pivot, was sharper. Faster. Changed. He circled her, arms folded. You're different. Good different or bad different? She asked, panting lightly. He hesitated. Both. She flashed a grin, then lunged at him. He barely dodged the feint as she swept a kick toward his legs, forcing him to pivot. Her claws grazed his shoulder, not deep, but enough to sting. He caught her by the wrist and threw her toward the mat. She landed on her feet. Not bad for a human, she said. Not bad for a glowing Vulpine superweapon. She stepped closer, close enough for him to smell the heat rising off her. That a compliment? Observation. Her golden eyes narrowed. You've been watching me more closely. Hard not to. A silence passed between them. Charged. Not hostile, not playful. Just honest. Then she asked, quieter now. You ever wonder why it picked me? Why I carry this bloodline and not someone else more prepared? All the time, Dorian said. But I've also seen what happens when someone's born to do something, even when they didn't ask for it. Doesn't matter if they're ready. What matters is what they do when the moment comes. She stared at him for a long beat. Then nodded, slowly. I'm scared, she admitted. He stepped closer. Good. That means you're still sane. She exhaled. The more I remember, the more I feel like I'm unraveling. Like I'm not just unlocking knowledge, I'm becoming something I can't define. Dorian met her gaze. Then we define it together. Whatever comes next, you don't face it alone. She blinked. Her breath hitched slightly. That sounded dangerously close to affection, Commander. Don't get used to it, he said deadpan. But her smile lingered. And for the first time in days, she looked a little less like the last of a forgotten lineage, and a little more like herself again. Later that evening, the station's artificial night cycle kicked in, lights dimmed, traffic slowed, and most of Ark's zeniths shifted into its low-power lull. But neither Dorian nor Virilia slept. Instead, they stood in the sealed command balcony of sublevel Theta 3, a restricted overlook that gave a direct view of the dormant alien ship through reinforced crystalline glass. The vessel hovered in perfect stillness, surrounded by motionless observation drones. It glowed faintly now, not from lights, but from within, like a pulse beneath armor. "It's alive," Virilia said, arms folded, eyes fixed on the strange ship. "Not a ship in the traditional sense. More like a pod. A cocoon." Dorian leaned beside her. "You think it brought more than just a message? I think it's waiting. Maybe for a signal. Maybe for me." Dorian frowned. "I've seen tactical decoys dressed up as relics. This one doesn't feel like a trap, but it's still a piece of something bigger. A signal like that doesn't get sent alone." Virilia was quiet for a moment. Then, her voice dropped. "I remember a phrase from the archivist. Not in words, just in concept." He glanced at her. "Go on. The Watcher awakens first. The others follow behind the veil." She looked at him. "That ship may not be the threat. But it's the herald of whatever is." Dorian's jaw tightened. "And the station is the bullseye." They stood there, watching, as a soft vibration trembled under their feet. Dorian reached for his comm, but before he could activate it, the lights flickered red. "Security alert! Tier 1 intrusion detected. Sector Alpha, Concierge Wing. Repeat, unauthorized access. All personnel respond." Dorian was already moving. "Concierge Wing? That's the diplomatic hall. Where the children are," Virilia added, her ears twitching. They reached Sector Alpha within 4 minutes. The hallway was empty, eerily silent, the wall sconces flickering between red emergency lighting and cold white pulses. Dorian raised his weapon, sweeping corners. Virilia moved beside him, claws half extended, her glowing eyes narrowed. At the far end of the corridor, a door stood half open, leading to the educational wing reserved for visiting diplomat offspring. "Thermal readings," Dorian muttered, scanning. 2. Maybe 3 heat signatures inside. They crept closer. Inside, the room was trashed, tables overturned, flickering hollow projectors casting twisted shadows across the walls. And standing in the center, a tall, humanoid figure in matte black armor that rippled like ink. Its helmet was smooth, eyeless. One arm held a child, no more than 10 years old, tightly against its hip. The child was shaking, not crying. The figure turned as Dorian entered, no weapon visible, but the danger was thick in the air. "Set him down," Dorian said, voice calm but lethal. The thing didn't move. Then came the sound, click-click hum, the same alien pattern from the sublevel. Virilia stepped forward. The figure reacted. Not violently, but reverently. It lowered to one knee and released the child, who scrambled toward Dorian. The moment the child crossed the threshold of the door, the figure vanished. Not walked. Not cloaked. It simply flickered out of existence. Virilia swayed, clutching the wall. "You okay?" Dorian asked, catching her elbow. She nodded shakily. "That thing wasn't real. It was a projection." He looked at her. "From the ship?" She nodded. "No question." Dorian cursed under his breath and looked toward the exit. "The void isn't just coming. It's already here." The station's alarm faded, replaced by the low hum of recalibrating systems. Red lights dimmed to yellow standby glows. Emergency teams swarmed the diplomatic wing, medics checking the children, techs scanning for residual energy, and security officers running diagnostics on every inch of compromised space. But Dorian and Virilia stood apart, near the far corner of the hall, their backs to the crowd. "It wasn't a hallucination," Virilia said quietly, still steadying herself. "It wasn't some psychic imprint like we feared. That projection, whatever it was, reacted to me." "You think it was testing you?" "No," she said. "It recognized me." Dorian exhaled slowly. "So either it came here looking for you, or it was sent to confirm you're active." Virilia's claws retracted. She folded her arms across her chest, tail twitching in agitation. The message the archivist gave me. It wasn't just a warning. It was a summon. This is the beginning. He nodded grimly. Then we treat it like a first contact incursion. I'll start reinforcing the access points below, boost AI surveillance, and move the children out of the diplomatic wing, quietly. Virelia stared toward the empty space where the figure had vanished. This isn't going to stay quiet for long. Later that cycle, the station's top-level security council met in a private chamber sealed by AI encryption. Dorian stood before the holotable, arms behind his back, flanked by Virelia and Director Halvin. There's no easy way to say this. Halvin started. So I'll be blunt. Something's activated on this station, something old. And it's targeting our AES area guest. A dozen faces flickered across the screen, Earth Council officials, Galactic Alliance envoys, and even one silent representative of the Verdari Watch, their cloaked form unreadable. We've reviewed the incident, said a Centurion admiral with cold silver eyes. The child was unharmed. The projection vanished. You want to lock down the entire station based on that? This wasn't a prank, Dorian snapped. This thing bypassed our sensors. Entered a restricted diplomatic corridor. It knew Virelia by name. Assuming your guest isn't staging it herself, muttered another delegate. Virelia bared her teeth slightly, but said nothing. Halvin stepped in. We're not asking for galactic mobilization. Just provisional authority. Reinforce interstation sectors. Expand psych-resistance protocols. And prepare for deeper anomalies. The council was silent. Finally, the Verdari envoy spoke. Granted. On condition you continue to contain the threat, and Lady Sariwayan. Virelia's ears flattened slightly. I'm not the threat. No, the envoy replied. But you attract it. That night, Virelia stood in her quarters, freshly showered, draped in a loose robe that shimmered like starlight. Her fur had settled, but her eyes hadn't lost the faint glow that lingered since the archivist's message. She stared at the star lanes outside her viewport, blue streaks of ships blinking in and out of warp. The door chimed. She didn't look up. It's open, she called. Dorian stepped in. No armor. No weapons. Just his plain black shirt and fatigue pants. Just checking on you. Making sure I haven't sprouted void wings and summoned another shadow beast? Not tonight. She turned, lips curling faintly. Then I'm flattered. He hesitated in the doorway. You should sleep. I should, she said, but I keep seeing its eyes. The projection? She nodded. There was no malice in them. Just hunger. Not for flesh. For something deeper. Something I carry. Dorian stepped closer. And if it comes again? She raised her chin. Then we make sure it understands I bite. Their eyes locked. Neither smiled. But the connection between them, now forged in fire and memory, was no longer deniable. The following morning arrived quietly, but it was the wrong kind of quiet. No tremors. No system flickers. No anomalous reports. That silence made Dorian more uneasy than any alarm. Still nothing from the ship? He asked as he walked into the central command dome. Still dormant, replied Officer Lane, scrolling through the latest surveillance data. It's giving off faint heat signatures, no life signs. Just sitting there. Anything else vanish from the cameras? Lane hesitated. One thing. Sector Theta 7. Storage bay. A technician assigned to inventory backups never checked in. Dorian's jaw tensed. And? The cams glitched, 2 seconds of dead feed then came back. The tech's gone. No trace. Dorian turned on his heel. Prep a team. Seal the bay. And get me Virelia. Virelia arrived moments later, her silver-white hair pulled back into a functional braid, blue fur sleek and brushed. She wore a reinforced bodysuit now, not ceremonial, not flashy, just dark and tight, designed for movement. She saw the look on Dorian's face as she entered the command dome. They took someone. He nodded. Bay Theta 7. One tech. No blood. No comms. Gone. Her tail dropped, expression darkening. Then it's begun. They descended together into the lower decks, flanked by 2 armed officers. Every sound echoed in the maintenance halls now, too long, too loud. The air tasted stale. When they reached the storage bay, the lights were flickering. The room was a mess, crates overturned, panels scorched. No sign of the technician. But something else was there. Glyphs. Burned into the floor in curved arcs, glowing faint blue. Virelia stepped forward, crouching over the symbols. She reached out and touched one, and the moment her claws met the surface, her pupils dilated. She gasped. Virelia! He caught her as she stumbled, barely conscious, her body twitching in his arms. It's showing me something, she whispered. The void, it feeds on erasure. It doesn't destroy with violence. It consumes meaning, identity, memory. Then that tech. He's not dead, she said, barely audible. He's gone. Unwritten. She clutched his jacket, claws gripping tight. It's starting to dig into this station. Just like it did to others before. Where next, Dorian? He looked around, the symbols now crawling up the far wall like vines of light. No, he muttered. Not if I can help it. Hours later, they sat in a sealed medbay chamber, both of them quiet. Dorian watched Virelia sip water slowly, her fingers still trembling slightly from the overload. He hadn't left her side since the glyphs lit up. You risked yourself, he said. Again. She smiled weakly. I'm a quick study in bad habits. You need to stop reaching into things we don't understand. If I don't, she said, who will? Dorian looked at her, long and hard. Then let me go first next time. That stopped her. She blinked once. Why? Because I'd rather it erase me than you. For the first time since this began, her breath caught. She set the cup down and looked away. Don't say things like that, Commander. Why not? Because I believe you. Later that night, Dorian found himself alone on the station's upper maintenance ring, a thin corridor that circled the outer edge of Ark's zenith like a halo. It wasn't officially part of security patrol, but it had become his thinking spot. Beyond the reinforced glass, the alien ship still floated like a phantom, its form more suggestion than structure now. The stars behind it seemed to bend unnaturally, like space was refusing to sit still in its presence. He clenched his fist, then forced it to relax. He was trained for threats with weight, blades, bullets, invasions, explosives. Not unmaking. Virelia's voice echoed in his mind, it feeds on identity. And worse, it's begun. He didn't notice the footsteps behind him until they were almost beside him. Thought I'd find you here, she said. He glanced sideways. Virelia, in a dark coat over her bodysuit, her white hair loose and drifting in the recycled breeze. You should be resting. So should you. He leaned back against the glass. Sleep doesn't help much when reality's falling apart. She stepped beside him, close enough that their arms almost touched. That technician. Joras, his name was. I read his file. He was a poet before enlisting in logistics. Loved writing. Wrote 100 pages of poetry about stars. Now, nothing. The AI has no record of him ever having filed those poems. His file exists, but it's missing him. He turned toward her. It's targeting individuals. Why not you? I don't know yet. Maybe I'm too visible. Or maybe it's still deciding what I am. You're not its prey. Her golden eyes glinted. Then what? Its rival? He held her gaze. No. Its opposite. She didn't reply. Instead, she looked back toward the ship, expression unreadable. After a pause, she asked, what happens to us if this spreads? Dorian didn't flinch. Then we fight until we can't. She smirked. Still romantic for a soldier. No, he said, voice low. Just stubborn. Virelia stepped forward and placed her palm on the glass, directly over the hovering ship. The next move is mine. It's been waiting for me to cross the line. What line? The one between memory and purpose. She turned to him, suddenly serious. I want to go back to the chamber. The one under the station. Dorian blinked. Virelia. I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you. Whatever power it gave me, I haven't unlocked all of it yet. And if we're going to survive what's coming, I need everything it left for me. He looked at her, at the strength in her stance, the tremor barely suppressed in her hands, the fire in her voice. You're not going alone. I didn't think I would, she said quietly. And for the first time, when she smiled, there was no mockery in it. Only trust. The descent back into the sublevel was different this time. The walls didn't feel cold, they felt aware. As if the station itself now remembered them. Dorian's every step echoed louder than it should, and Virelia's movements were more fluid, more deliberate, as if she was retracing the steps of someone she used to be. They passed through the once dormant corridor, the liquid alloy panels shifting open without prompt. The chamber beyond welcomed them again, not with silence this time, but with a low harmonic hum, like the purring of something vast and unseen. Dorian stopped at the threshold. You sure? Virelia nodded, stepping inside. It's waiting. The moment her feet touched the chamber floor, the glyphs blazed to life, bathing the room in soft indigo light. The pedestal at the center pulsed again, as it had before, but this time, it didn't open. Instead, the walls themselves began to rotate, revealing new patterns, forming concentric rings of light. Last time, it showed you a memory, Dorian said. What's different now? I'm not here to receive anymore, she murmured. I'm here to respond. She walked forward, claws flexing, fur shimmering faintly as the chamber's energy pulsed through her. At the center of the pedestal, a column of light shot upward, and inside it, hovering midair, was a new shape. A shard. Thicker than the last. Darker. Iridescent like oil on water. Virelia reached for it. Dorian stepped forward, tense. Careful. But the moment her fingers touched the shard, the chamber exploded with light. He was thrown back, slamming into the wall hard enough to rattle his teeth. For a moment, he couldn't see, just blinding white, and the echo of her voice screaming in a language he didn't recognize. Then silence. When his vision cleared, she was floating. Literally. Suspended in midair, arms spread slightly, fur rippling like it was underwater. The shard was embedded in her chest, not piercing flesh, but hovering just above it, bonded by light. Virelia! He shouted. Her eyes snapped open, and they weren't golden anymore. They were white. Brilliant. Terrifying. The glyphs on the walls raced in speed, their patterns accelerating, forming spirals of impossible geometry. And then she spoke, not in her voice. Not alone. We are the Bloodborn. We are the Seal. We remember what you have forgotten. Dorian backed a step. What are you? She is chosen. We are awakened. The drift hungers, but the gate is not yet open. The shard pulsed once, and Virelia dropped, falling into his arms. He caught her, lowering her gently to the floor. Her eyes fluttered open. Back to gold. She looked up at him, dazed. Did it work? He exhaled. Define work. I have its voice now, she whispered. The other half. The counter seed. The one that seals what the void unbinds. Then we're one step closer, he said, brushing a damp strand of hair from her brow. But inside, he knew. They hadn't unlocked power. They'd declared war. Virelia didn't speak on the way back to her quarters. Her breathing was steady, but something in her had changed. She moved with a heavier presence, like the gravity around her had increased and her body hadn't quite adjusted yet. The shard, now dormant, hovered faintly beneath the skin of her chest, visible only when the light caught it just right. It pulsed slowly, in sync with her heartbeat. Dorian stayed close, saying nothing. She needed silence, not comfort. When they reached her door, she turned to him. Stay. He paused. You sure? Her voice was quiet. I don't want to be alone. Not tonight. Inside, the suite was dim. She lit no lamps. Just the soft glow of Release Prime's swirling clouds outside the window lit the room in blue and silver. Virilia sat on the edge of the low couch, her back straight, her tail coiled beside her like a serpent waiting to strike. I heard them, she said finally. The ones trapped in the drift. Dorian leaned against the wall, arms crossed. What did they say? Nothing, she whispered. That's the horror. There's nothing left in them to speak. No name. No history. Just pain. The kind that burns through memory until all that remains is hunger. She looked up. Her eyes were glassy with something he hadn't seen in her before. Pure vulnerability. I don't want to become that. You won't. You can't promise that. No, he said. But I'll die before I let it happen. She rose, walked to him slowly, and placed her palm flat on his chest. Don't say that. I mean it. I know. That's why it scares me. He gently covered her hand with his. For a moment they just stood like that, the room silent except for the distant hum of the station. Then her ears twitched. Something's wrong. Dorian reached for his comm, but the screen was already flickering with static. He looked toward the window. Outside, the lights along the outer hull of Ark's zenith dimmed one by one. Not like a power failure, but like something was swallowing the light. Emergency lighting's gone, he muttered. Backup power, offline? A distant shudder vibrated through the floor. Then another. Virilia's eyes flared with white light. It's testing the seal. Already. Dorian drew his sidearm. Then it picked the wrong station. She stared into the distance, claws unsheathing slowly. We have to go back to the chamber. You're still recovering. If we don't reinforce the seal, it'll reach the mines on this station. And once it starts, it'll move too fast for us to stop. Then we move, Dorian said. Another tremor hit, stronger this time. In the hallway, lights burst in a cascade of sparks. Emergency klaxons stayed silent. Too silent. The void wasn't attacking with force. It was slipping in. Quietly. Like memory unraveling in the dark. The corridors leading back to the sublevel were not empty. They were hollow. Dorian and Virilia moved through flickering blue emergency lights, the silence punctuated only by the occasional, unearthly crack, like glass breaking in a vacuum. Each sound echoed longer than it should have, as though space itself was distorting. We're in Phase 1. Virilia whispered, scanning the glyphs that now pulsed faintly along the walls. Environmental degradation. Sensory decay. It's eroding the station's fabric, not just physically. Conceptually. You're saying it's erasing the idea of the station? Dorian asked, his voice steady but clipped. Yes. And once that idea is weak enough, the next phase begins, identity siphon. He tapped his comm again. Still no signal. The AI is dark. Emergency nets are down. Not down, she corrected. Unremembered. There's a difference. They rounded a corner, then stopped cold. Ahead, a security team stood completely still in the corridor. 4 officers in full armor. Not moving. Not speaking. Just staring. Their visors were dark. Their breathing silent. The hallway shimmered faintly around them like heatwaves on a dying planet. Recognize them? Dorian asked softly. 2 of them, she said. That's Lieutenant Arvin and Corporal Diaz. He raised his weapon. Arvin's been dead 2 months. Virilia's ears flattened. Then those aren't people. One of the figures twitched. Another turned its head, slowly, creaking unnaturally, as though its joints had never learned to move. Then, in perfect unison, all 4 collapsed like puppets whose strings had been cut. No sound. Just stillness. Virilia stepped forward and knelt beside one. Her claws hovered over the faceplate, then retracted. They're not real. Constructs. Stitched from memory residue. Dorian lowered his weapon slightly. Why show us this? To make us question. To slow us down. Confuse what's real and what isn't. They continued moving. At the next junction, Dorian paused. Did you see that? Virelia turned her head. What? That sign. It said sublevel gamma, but we just came from there. She looked at the wall, where no sign now existed. He clenched his jaw. It's distorting the layout. We're getting close. It's defending the chamber. Suddenly, from above, a tendril of shadow shot from the ceiling, fast as lightning. Dorian grabbed Virelia and shoved her aside, the tendril slamming into the ground where she'd stood, leaving a perfect circular burn. He fired 2 quick bursts into the ceiling. The tendril recoiled with a shriek, not a sound of pain, but one of recognition. Virelia rolled back to her feet, eyes blazing white now. No more running! She thrust her palm toward the burning wall, and glyphs exploded outward, forming a circular seal that flared with deep blue fire. The shadows retreated instantly, hissing as they dissolved into vapor. That'll buy us minutes, she said. Not more, Dorian grunted. Then we run. They sprinted through the collapsing hallways, each step bringing them closer to the ancient chamber beneath the station. Behind them, the corridor began to forget itself, walls blinking out of existence, light and metal fracturing like shards of a broken mind. But ahead? The seal called to her. And she was done being afraid. They reached the chamber just as the last hallway behind them crumbled into nothingness, walls and lights folding inward as though they had never been built. Dorian slammed his palm on the override glyph beside the chamber entrance, and the door sealed with a resonant hum, locking them inside the one place the void couldn't unmake, at least for now. The chamber responded instantly to Virelia's presence. The walls came alive with waves of light, swirling like deep water stirred by a forgotten current. The central pedestal blossomed open once again, this time revealing not a single shard, but a ring of them, 7 in total, orbiting one another like planets. Each one pulsed to a rhythm. A beat. A language. It's a code, Virelia breathed, stepping forward. Each one a frequency. A seal. Dorian followed her, weapon still drawn out of habit, even though he knew it would be useless against whatever was coming. Can you read them? He asked. No, she said. But I can feel them. She reached toward the orbiting ring. The moment her fingers crossed their plane, the shards stopped, locking into a still circle. A voice filled the room, deep and ancient, not in words, but in emotion, warning. Reckoning. Choice. What does it want? Dorian asked. Virelia didn't answer. Her eyes closed, her body still. Then suddenly, she screamed. Light exploded from the circle. Dorian was thrown back, his vision white-hot. When he hit the wall, he rolled, gasping, and scrambled toward her. She floated again, but this time her body contorted, gripped in agony. The shards weren't orbiting, they were embedding themselves into her mind. Visions flickered across the walls like a stuttering film reel. A planet with no sky, only mouths in the dark. A soldier with half a face, reaching for a forgotten name. A child, floating through vacuum, smiling even as their memory unraveled. The images bled into Dorian's mind too, like someone forcing foreign memories down his throat. He growled in pain and forced himself to move, fighting against the crushing weight of it. Virelia, stop! He shouted. Her head snapped toward him. Her eyes, no longer gold, no longer white, were now black, infinite, stars swirling inside. I see it, she whispered. The void's heart. Let go of the link. I am the link, she said, and her voice wasn't hers anymore. The guardian's soul must anchor the unmaking. Dorian didn't hesitate. He leapt into the circle and grabbed her, pulling her down, out of the glyph ring's line of energy. She gasped, collapsing against him, her breath ragged, fur soaked with sweat. The chamber lights dimmed again. The shards dissolved into motes of fading light. He held her, arms tight around her trembling frame. "I've got you! I've got you!" She clutched his shirt with both hands, eyes still unfocused. "I saw what's coming." He leaned in. "Tell me. The void is not a creature," she whispered. "It's a question. What every mind asks itself, eventually, what if I had never existed? And when enough minds ask that question at once, something answers." Dorian closed his eyes. They weren't fighting a monster. They were fighting forgetting itself. The next hours passed in a blur of containment procedures and silent understanding. Arx Zenith's command AI slowly reinitialized, and power was restored sector by sector. Whatever had breached the station's mind space, its conceptual fabric, had been pushed back. But not defeated. Virelia rested in the medical wing, monitored by techs who didn't know what they were looking for and dared not ask. Dorian stood at the foot of her bed, arms folded, watching the rhythmic rise and fall of her chest. Her face twitched in unconscious thought, dreams, memories, or both. When she finally stirred awake, she didn't sit up. "I saw the final thread," she murmured. He stepped closer. "Tell me. It ends where it began. Not in the stars. Not in blood. But in a choice. The drift doesn't consume by force. It waits for you to let go of yourself. It waits for weakness. It waits for permission." She sat up now, eyes tired but clear. "And if I let it, it would take everything. But you didn't." "No," she whispered. "Because you were there. Because you pulled me back." Dorian sat beside her bed, voice low. "And I'd do it again. Every time." They said nothing for a long while. Then she turned to him. "The seal is reinforced, but not permanent. That door will open again someday. Then we prepare," he said. "I won't be enough, Dorian. Not alone." He reached forward, took her hand, clawed, calloused, warm. "You won't ever be alone." Weeks passed. The alien vessel outside Arx Zenith vanished one night, not through warp or hyperlight, but by ceasing to be. One moment it hovered, the next it was simply not there. No ripples. No debris. Just absence. Virelia was officially appointed as Earth-Asteria liaison and given a permanent residence on the station. The council still debated what to do with her, but they no longer dismissed her as a reckless diplomat. Dorian stayed at her side, promoted quietly to High Threat Security Command. But he still walked the station, patrolled the lower levels, and watched the stars with his usual quiet focus. One night they stood again on the outer ring, side by side, overlooking Raulis Prime's storm clouds. "You ever think about leaving this place?" Virelia asked. He shook his head. "Too much unfinished business." She smiled softly. "Same." They stood there in silence, her tail flicking gently behind her, his hand brushing hers. Then she looked at him, more serious now. "When the drift returns, will you still be here?" Dorian turned to her, meeting her golden gaze. "I'm not leaving you. Ever." And for once, she didn't respond with sarcasm. Instead, she leaned forward, touched her forehead to his, an ancient Asterii gesture of trust, of bond, of something deeper than war or duty. "I believe you, Commander," she whispered. And beneath the endless stars, two beings who had every reason to fear what lay ahead chose, instead, to remember. Together.